So today is the Disappearance, Lokanatha Goswami. So we'll just sing this song we usually sing. Sparshada Bhagavat Viraha Janita Vilapa. Lamentation due to separation from the Lord and his associates. Narottam Das Thakur. This is from the Prarthana. Jaya Nila Premadana Karuna Pracho Jaya Nila Premadana Karuna Pracho Ena Prabhu Kota Gela Acharya Thakur Kahamara Swarup Rupa Kaha Sanatan Kahadasa Raghunatha Patita Pavan Kahamara Bhatta Yuga Kaha Kaviraj Eka Kale Kota Kela Goranatara Ashane Kativa Mata Annale Pashiva Kuranga Gunera Nid He Kota Kele Paba Se Sabha Sangira Sangha He Koila Vilas Se Sangana Paya Kande Narottama Das Jaya Nila Premadana Karuna Pracho Henu Prabhu Kota Gela Acharya Thakur So we'll read the translation to this song. Can you look up Lokanatha Goswami, please? He who brought the treasure of divine love and who is filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality as Srinivas Acharya gone? Where are my Srup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Jaganatha Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta, and where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against a rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. So it's the disappearance of Lokanatha Goswami. And of course, before I continue, I'll just Om Gyanatibidandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshulan Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karidavachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diditadanam Vancha Kalpadubhascha Kripa Sindubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you. So, of course, it's common in the world for people to celebrate birthdays, right? It's a very common thing. I think it's practically now widespread in every culture, and maybe it was always widespread in every culture, but it's definitely there. But the disappearance, the day somebody leaves, generally that's not celebrated. But within Gaudiya Vaishnavism and another Vaishnavism, other groups, they celebrate the disappearance of a great personality as well. And the examples given of the appearance of a great personality is like the sun rising, very beautiful. And the disappearance is also very beautiful. It's like the sun setting. So, anyways, today is Lokanatha Goswami's disappearance, and I'll just read a little bit about him from this Samadhi's book. Here we go. A personal associate of Lord Gauranga, fully absorbed in pure love. Sri Lokanatha Goswami was the eldest of the Goswamis living in Vrindavan. He shunned name and fame so much that he asked Krishnadas Kaviraj to keep his name out of Chaitanya Charitamrita. So out of the biography of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he didn't want his name in there. His body and mind were completely attached to Vrindavan, Dham. The divine Leelas of Radha Krishna played in his heart. His ears existed only to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is what he said. Anyone who reads the Srimad Bhagavatam, said Lokanatha Goswami, he is my friend. Once Sri Krishna himself appeared and gave Lokanatha a deity of Radha Vinod. Lokanatha Goswami carried his deity all over Vrindavan in a cloth bag hung around his neck. Although first rejecting, Lokanatha Goswami finally accepted Narottam Das for initiation as his only disciple. He appreciated his genuine humility and determination to serve. Every night, for 1 year, Narottam Das secretly served his guru by carefully cleaning the field where Lokanatha Goswami passed stool. Lokanatha Goswami's original deities of Radha Vinod are now worshipped in Jaipur, Rajasthan. A Pratibhu Murti, expanded form of the original deity of Radha Vinod, adorns the altar at the Radha Gokulananda temple in Vrindavan. The samadhi of Lokanatha Goswami is the largest one in the temple courtyard. He serves Srimati Radharani as Manjuli Manjari. This is a shloka from Narottam Das Thakur. I worship the lotus feet of Sri Lokanatha Goswami Prabhu, the son of Sri Padmanabha. He is a storehouse of single-minded service to the lotus feet of Radha Vinod. Yeah, it's interesting because I remember hearing one time how devotees, they brought a film of Srila Prabhupada to London for the London devotees to watch. Like Yamuna and Guru Das and different disciples of Srila Prabhupada who went to London, they were there, and some devotees came with these films, and they started watching them. And there was also some very new people in the room, not really devotees. They were there also, and so the devotees were watching the film of Srila Prabhupada, and these non-devotees were watching. And all the devotees were watching how Srila Prabhupada walked and how he was talking and just everything, how he was moving, and they're all, wow, Srila Prabhupada, look at this, amazing. They're all so amused and focused. Whereas, these other people in the room, they weren't so impressed in the sense that, like, the devotees were. So, in many ways, we read a lot of these short biographies of these personalities, and of course, there's longer biographies as well. But they actually mean something for somebody who has, or is trying to, or who has surrendered their life to Krishna. And that these personalities are worshipable because they are setting the example what it means to be a devotee, and specifically a pure devotee. Like him shunning name and fame. Of course, for a materialist, they don't shun name and fame. Means they're very much into name and fame. It's all about name and fame for a materialist, right? Everything they own, everything they have, it's all about trying to make themselves look good, make themselves, to their friends, to their family, whatever, their house, their expensive house, expensive car, this, that, whatever they have. As Prabhupada said, every pauper is proud of their penny. Whatever they have, they're trying to, right? It's based on pride, it's based on false ego, it's based on not shunning name and fame, but trying to get attention. But Lokanatha Goswami, he just completely shunned that, name and fame. And for anybody who's tried to do that, just try to do it. It's not so easy, necessarily, especially if one is, not Krishna conscious. It's not easy, just shun name and fame. Generally, people want recognition for things they do and etc. So we know that we're becoming more Krishna conscious when we're at least desiring to shun name and fame, and what to speak of actually shunning name and fame to whatever degree we can, that's how we know we're making some spiritual progress. It's not a secret. Am I making spiritual progress? We could test ourselves. How much am I shunning name and fame? That's a good test. And he was, so he was extremely humble. And he was dedicated to his deities. Now this is another thing. For a materialist, I think, oh, so what? He was dedicated to these, how they see it, statues, so what? But for a devotee who has faith in the process of devotional service, who accepts Archamurti as Krishna, he was so sold out to his deities, he was completely dedicated. Which is also not an easy thing to, means dedicated out of pure devotion, which is not necessarily an easy thing to do. Try to be dedicated to a particular deity with pure devotion, your whole life. And it's another thing to note, because so many of our acharyas that we read about, so many of them, they live very simple lives and dedicated to their deities in chanting Hare Krishna and reading Srimad Bhagavatam and so on. But it's important to note that, yes, deity worship is for neophytes. That's true. It's stated in Shastra. Neophytes means they can't see Krishna anywhere else besides the deity. They can't see Krishna in the devotees. They can't, what to speak of the non-devotees. And they see no need to preach. There's no need, right? That's how you know someone's a neophyte. There's no need. They don't see the importance of it. They don't appreciate it. So therefore, there's deity worship, and then they engage in it, and it's good. And gradually get purified, and right. But deity worship is not only for the neophytes. Lokanatha Goswami, I mean, he's Lokanatha Goswami, and there's so many acharyas. Vrindavan Das Thakur, Vamshidas Babaji, there's so many of them, and they all engaged in deity worship practically. They all had a deity they were completely sold out to. So, so that's something to note too, that deity worship is important, therefore Srila Prabhupada established it throughout the world. And it's one of the 5 most potent forms of devotional service. According to Rupa Goswami, the nectar devotion. And of course, Srila Prabhupada said in relation to deity worship, he said, they were asking him all these questions, oh, what about this, what about that? Srila Prabhupada said, well, keep it simple. Because the process for this age of Kali Yuga is chanting, Harinam. So they have to be both, going on. Deity worship and also chanting and preaching, both sidelong, beside each other. So, but of course, a way we could also tell that we're advancing is that we're very much interested in sharing the message of Krishna, spreading Krishna consciousness. The more we have a desire to spread Krishna consciousness, the more we're advancing. And it should be like an overwhelming desire that completely trumps all other desires. And just like there was this one devotee, Manidhar, well, he's still around, Manidhar Prabhu, book distributor. But he was like really attached to distributing books, like extremely attached. And one time he was sick. And the devotees didn't want him to go out because he was sick. This is many years ago, but so they practically. But he was like, it's almost like, I'm thinking about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how they locked him in Gambhira, didn't want him to get out. But so the devotees saying, Manidhar Prabhu, you can't go out and distribute books. You have to stay here. You have to stay in your room. You have to take care of yourself. And what he did is he climbed out the window. Somehow or other, climbed up the window and got out and, to distribute. It's so much attachment, though. This is the blessing of the spiritual master to be attached to preach. And just like Prabhupada one time said about His Holiness Giraj Swami, one time he came back, he was a brahmachari there in Mumbai, and he was telling Srila Prabhupada, giving Prabhupada a report of the day's activities. That'd be nice, right? You go out, preach, and you come back and give Srila Prabhupada a report. So he was giving him a report of the day's activities there in Mumbai, and then he said that, yes, Srila Prabhupada, this preaching, it's so great. He said, I like it so much. And then Prabhupada said, oh, he said, no, not like. He said, this is our life. You know, this is our life. Preaching is our life. Not that we like it, but it's our life. Where there's a difference there. Just like some people say, oh, I like Krishna consciousness, right? Oh, Krishna consciousness is cool. I like Krishna consciousness. Well, there's a difference between liking Krishna consciousness and Krishna consciousness being our life. So that has to, should happen, that it becomes part of us. It is part of us, but if we realize it. So anyways, those are just some points about Lokanatha Goswami, and we could try to humbly serve him and try to develop even a little bit of his mood of humility. And when we go to Vrindavan, we could visit his deity is there in Radha Gokulananda Temple. Radha Vinod's there, so also Rajasthan we could visit. All right, so also tomorrow is, I won't read, I'll just read the summary of, and I'm going to need a Bhagavatam too, but please. But tomorrow is the Ratha Yatra in Los Angeles. It's also the initiation ceremony tomorrow. Everybody's been waiting for that, of Glenn and Alex and Mike, right, and Ed. So, but in the morning is the Ratha Yatra in Los Angeles, and some devotees will go up there. So I'll just read this summary of the 13th chapter of the Madhya Lila. So I won't get into the chapter, but it'll just give a little kind of taste of what's going on in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in this chapter in the Ratha Yatra. So this is entitled The Ecstatic Dancing of the Lord at Ratha Yatra. A summary of this chapter is given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his Amrita Pravaha Bhashya as follows. After bathing early in the morning, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw the deities, Jaganatha, Baladev, and Subhadra, get aboard their 3 cars. This function is called Pandu Vijay. At that time, King Prataparudra took a broom with a golden handle and began to cleanse the road. All right, so this is a very short summary, so everybody's going to have to focus, or you'll just completely miss it. And I'm not implying that that anybody's not focusing, but I'm just saying, just in case, because you'll completely miss it if you don't focus, because it's so short. This function is called Pandu Vijay. At that time, King Prataparudra took a broom with a golden handle and began to cleanse the road. Lord Jaganatha took permission from the goddess of fortune and then started in the car for the Gundicha temple. The road to the temple led along a broad, sandy beach, and on both sides of the road were residential quarters, houses, and gardens. Along that road, the servants called Godas began to pull the cars. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu divided his Sankirtan party into seven divisions, with 2 mridangas in each division. There were altogether 14 mridangas. 14 beautiful mridangas playing, all on time, right? While performing kirtan, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited various symptoms of transcendental ecstasy, and Jagannath and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exchanged their feelings very blissfully. When the cars reached the place known as Balagandi, the devotees offered the deities simple food. At this time, in a nearby garden, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees took a brief rest from the dancing. So anyways, a little bit about Ratha Yatra and dancing and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So yeah, tomorrow devotees, a lot will go there. So, could celebrate. All right, so now we'll read the Srimad Bhagavatam, and we're reading from Canto 5, which is entitled The Creative Impetus. Chapter 1, The Activities of Maharaja Priyavrata. And we're on text 37. So Dravida Prabhu, would you like to? Okay, we'll do Om Namo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Aho Sabanotishtam Yadanabhinavesto Ham Indriyar Avidya Rachita Vishama Vishayanda Kupe Talalam Alam Amushya Banitaya Vinodamrigyam Mam Dig Dig Itigar Hayam Chakara.
Okay, if everybody could please repeat. Aho, alas, sadhu, not good, anishtatam, executed, yet, because, abhiniveshataha, being completely absorbed, aham, I, indriyayi, for sense gratification, avidya, by nescience, rachita, made, vishama, causing distress, vishaya, sense gratification, andakupe, in the dark well, tat, that, alam, insignificant, alam, of no importance, amushaya, of that, vinitayaha, wife, vinod mrigam, just like a dancing monkey, mam, unto me, dik, all condemnation, dik, all condemnation, iti, thus, garhayam, criticism, chakara, he did. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The king thus began criticizing himself. Alas, how condemned I have become because of my sense gratification. I have now fallen into material enjoyment, which is exactly like a covered well. I have had enough. I am not going to enjoy anymore. Just see how I have become like a dancing monkey in the hands of my wife. Because of this, I am condemned. Purport. How condemned is the advancement of material knowledge can be understood from the behavior of Maharaja Priyavrata. He performed such wonderful acts as creating another sun, which shined during the night, and creating a chariot so great that its wheels formed vast oceans. These activities are so great that modern scientists cannot even imagine how such things can be done. Maharaj Priyavrata acted very wonderfully in the material field of activities, but because he was dealing in sense gratification, ruling his kingdom and dancing to the indications of his beautiful wife, he personally condemned himself. When we think about this example of Maharaj Priyavrata, we can just consider how degraded is the modern civilization of materialistic advancement. Modern so-called scientists and other materialists are very satisfied because they can construct great bridges, roads, and machines. But such activities are nothing comparable to those of Maharaj Priyavrata. Maharaj Priyavrata could condemn himself in spite of his wonderful activities. How condemned we are in our so-called advancement of materialist civilization. We conclude that such advancement has nothing to do with the problems of the living entity entangled within this material world. Unfortunately, modern man does not understand his entanglement and how condemned he is, nor does he know what kind of body he is going to have in the next life. From a spiritual point of view, a great kingdom, beautiful wife, and wonderful material activities are all impediments to spiritual advancement. Maharaj Priyavrata had served the great sage Narada sincerely. Therefore, even though he had accepted material opulences, he could not be deviated from his own task. He again became Krishna conscious, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Neha bikramana shosti pativayo navidyate sopapyasya madharmasya trayate mahato bayat. in devotional service, there's no loss or diminution. And even a small service rendered in devotional life is sufficient to save one from the greatest danger. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 40. Such renunciation as Maharaja Priyavrata's is possible only by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Generally, when people are powerful, or when they have a beautiful wife, a beautiful home, and material popularity, they become more and more entangled. Priyavrata Maharaj, however, having been completely trained by the great sage Narada, revived his Krishna consciousness in spite of all impediments. So Krishna is Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and He will help us if we want to be helped. God helps those who help themselves, Prabhupada quotes in the Bhagavad Gita purport. Of course, sometimes we don't want to be helped, and therefore, you know, what can Krishna do? I mean, we have free will. He doesn't force us, and sometimes people, I mean, Maya, or the material energy, is so powerful. We may even be in the association of the Supreme Personality of God Himself. Just like in the case of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, his servant, his Brahmin servant. What was his name? Krishnadas, yeah. Krishnadas, he was with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he became diverted, he became distracted. By the Bhattataris? Yes. By the gypsies. It's kind of like when devotees, they go to rainbow gathering and kind of get diverted. Like there was a bhakta, and bless his heart. But they went there, and, you know, we're all there, and I actually wasn't at that one. I only went to one. But they're all there together, and devotees are chanting Hare Krishna, and, you know, doing what they do out there, serving prasadam and everything. And all of a sudden they see Bhakta John, his name was. This was like 20 years ago or something. They say Bhakta John, and Bhakta John's over there smoking pot, you know, smoking marijuana with them. You know, it's like, what's up, Bhakta John? I became diverted. But even with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this Krishnadas, he became diverted. He became captured by these people. Of course, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and says he, you know, dragged him by his hair, and then, you know, they traveled back to Jagannath Puri together. But if we're not determined to make advancement, if we're not determined to help ourselves, so to speak, then we can't expect much help from Krishna. And therefore, the best thing for us at all times, at all places, in all circumstances, is the association of devotees, because good devotees, more advanced devotees. Why? Because fixed up devotees, because they give us the inspiration, the strength, the determination by their example to move forward. In other words, by associating with devotees, we want to become better, right? We want to become better. And that's an important aspect, to want to become better, because complacency is actually of the devil. Complacency is just, it's wrong, it's bad. Why? Because Krishna consciousness has nothing to do with complacency. It means that perfection is can be attained, but even perfection is unlimited, so we keep on going. In other words, we could always improve our service and our consciousness. That's how we should see. But we have to be careful, because we may want to be helped on some level, you know, deep down inside, but we may have let ourselves go so far into the modes of passion and ignorance, into illusion, that it's very difficult. Just like I'm speaking, anyways, people call me up, young men, or they talk to me in person, and they're devotees, and they have some attraction to Krishna, and whatever. I'm not going to get on to the issues that they tell me. Kind of intense conversations sometimes. But through my stay in the Brahmachari ashram here in San Diego, and I spoke with many devotees, and yeah, they call, oh yeah, I'm so attached to this woman. And he says, and they say, I know it's not good, and I know it's not going to work out. And I know it's just completely bad trouble. It's just like, there's nothing good about it. And they say they know that. And from knowing the person and knowing who they're talking about, I also know it's not good. And he knows it's good, not good. But he says, what can I do? I'm attached. And then what am I supposed to say? What am I supposed to say? What can I say to you? And therefore, sometimes people, they just have to write the school of hard knocks. They got to get knocked around, right? But for those of us who haven't crossed that line, and hopefully we won't, it should be a cautionary tale for us. The Bhagavatam is full of cautionary tales. Not tales, but cautionary accounts, historical account. Don't cross the line. Why? Because the consciousness can be hijacked by the eternal enemy in the form of lust or material desire. And once crossing that line, it's very hard to cross back over. Just speak with people. And it could go on for years. I'll just speak lifetimes. Like I spoke with one person here, and they're nice people and whatever, but they came to the Sunday feast, and I go around, I talk with people at the Sunday feast, and I kind of look for new people and give them one of Srila Prabhupada's books. But so I went up to this mother and her daughter, and I saw them years ago. I've been here for now, 14 years. They haven't kicked me out yet, but and we don't plan. So I saw them years ago, like 10 years ago, and they were coming often. Every Sunday, very steady. So then I saw them, fast forward, 10 years later, and I go, oh, surprised to see you. Like, what happened? Did you move away, or, what happened? And the mother went on to explain, oh, yeah, well, my daughter, the daughter was there. My daughter got really busy with school and, homework and this and that, and now the daughter, went through high school already or something. And, we just kind of stopped coming to the temple. Yeah, we got a little sidetracked. And I said, yeah. I said, it's been I think it's been 10 years. And she's like, yeah, that's true. It has been 10 years. I can't believe it. But imagine, that's a long time, 10 years. So, so we don't want to, wake up 10 years later or whatever and just, what happened? And therefore we have to be careful not to skate, right, too close to the edge. And of course, this is being brought up in this particular pastime. Of course, it's going back and forth, the verses and purports. And Priyavrata Maharaj was asked to enter in this particular service. He was a brahmachari. He was a liberated soul, or he is a liberated soul. But he was asked, okay, you marry and you rule. So he did it. But he didn't want to, but he did it on the order of Lord Brahma on the request. And here he's mentioning alas, how condemned I've become because of my sense gratification. I have now fallen into material enjoyment like a covered well. I've become a dancing monkey in the hands of my wife. So he is feeling that I've wasted my time. I have engaged in sense gratification. I've wasted my time. I've forgotten Krishna. Now, of course, how much he actually forgot Krishna, the acharyas, the teachers, they take the role of conditioned souls to teach us. But whatever the case is, within him, and he's saying here, that there is some renunciation developing, or you could say re-manifesting, I don't know if that's a word, re-manifesting, reawakening within him. And in these previous, in the following verses, he is going to just renounce, to leave, return to his previous position, and put his sons, and I think he had one daughter, but put all of them in charge. Which one of them is Maharaja Agnidra, yeah. Who has a son, what's his son's name? Agnidra's son? Anyways, he has a son who gets married to one woman, and then she gives birth to Rishabhadev. And this is how the pastimes unfold in the Bhagavatam, Lord Rishabhadev and his activities and teachings. So whatever the case is, these kings in the Bhagavatam, Priyavrata Maharaj and others, they're teaching us that one is they may get involved, or like here he got involved and he's feeling himself fallen and this and that, but he's also given the example to leave, right? In other words, to become detached. And this should be everybody's plan, right? We should have a master plan. And part of the master plan should be that within our life. And part of that master plan should be that, especially those in the household ashram, householders, but everybody, to, in later years of life, to wholly and solely, directly engage in service to Krishna. In other words, to retire from having to make money and so on, and to just full-on dedication to spiritual life. And you see that with Srila Prabhupada. I mean, he set the example as well. He was a family man and, right, taking care of his children. I think Prabhupada, how many did Prabhupada have? Five children, and he and his wife. But eventually he left. He accepted vanaprastha, then eventually accepted sannyas. Now everybody doesn't have to accept sannyas, but vanaprastha is there to become, retired and engaged in Krishna consciousness in that way. So we should have that within our consciousness, you could say this master plan. And this is actually what it means to be a devotee, to have such plans. To be a devotee means to have Krishna conscious plans. So to be a devotee means to close the plan-making factory of our mind with all these mundane plans, and then to reopen the plan-making factory of spiritual plans, Krishna conscious plans. Yes, I'm going to do this for Krishna, I'm going to do that for Krishna, I'm going to whatever it may be. Services for Krishna. And we should engage our intelligence fully in that, under the direction of sadhu, the saintly persons, guru, the teacher, spiritual master, and scripture, shastra. And this is how these are some also tests. We could test ourselves. How much is my plan factory, spiritual plan factory, operating? How active is it? Right? That's one way. How much am I shunning material name and fame? And what was the other way I mentioned? I mentioned something else earlier too. Shunning material name and fame. The plan making is for Krishna consciousness there. There's another way, but anyways. Oh yeah, preaching. These are 3 tests. How much am I becoming interested in spreading the message of Krishna? That's a test. How much we're advancing. How much am I shunning name and fame? That's another test. The third test is how much is my intelligence and my mind and my very being engaged in plan making for Krishna consciousness, for the spread of Krishna consciousness. These are 3 ways we could test. So, all right. Does any of the devotees have any comments or? Yes.
I have 2 Manidar stories and a question.
Okay.
Manidar was German.
Yeah.
Is German.
Yeah.
And his family had a coat of arms, for many, many years, 150 years, 200 years. And the motto was, "Be my friend or I break your head." Typical German. So he's very strong-willed. He was, one time, there was a plaza, with shops and benches all around it in a park, typical of a, medieval city or. And a man was reading a newspaper. Manidhar sat down next to him, lit the newspaper on fire. What? He said, "I could not stand to see you reading that Prajalpa." The guy bought a Bhagavatam. He used to stop people on the Autobahn. In Germany, they're flying along at 100 miles an hour in their Mercedes. He would flag them to stop, and they think, "Oh, it must be an emergency." They're thinking, they roll down their window or, push down. He'd hand them a Bhagavatam and distribute a book. So the devotee says that he used to distribute books. Was it his potency, or they were just freaked by the guy? Either way, he was a top book distributor.
Yeah.
It's an example we shouldn't fall. I mean, we should appreciate his enthusiasm, determinations. That's a Manidhar.
Thank you.
So, does anybody else have a question? I don't want to stand in front of somebody
No,
else. Okay, so the question I was thinking that, and you actually have answered it quite nicely, but maybe you could speak a little more. So I'm a householder. I'm married. I'm young. I've got young children. Should I feel guilty that my wife? I'm a dancing monkey and blame the wife, and and the whole thing's bitter, like chewing glass. And I just think, how should I feel as a young householder?
Well, if you're in that mood, I don't know if it's going to work out so well, because people
You won't be a householder long.
people pick up on that. It's like, what's up with this? Well, I mean, if somebody's in that situation, it's not an accident, it's by some.
I'm married to a devotee girl.
Yeah, it's not an accident. You could say. I mean, in most cases, we hope, right? It's not an accident, but given it's normal marriage and everything with devotee, then a person in that situation, they should, like Gorkha Shordas Babaji told one man, he said, "You should see your wife as a maidservant of Krishna." And of course, the wife should see the husband as a servant of Krishna, and the children are devotees, and see, in the house it belongs to Krishna. In other words, to see everything in a Krishna conscious way, which depends on purification of consciousness, engaging in sadhana bhakti, chanting the holy names, and hearing the Bhagavatam, and other aspects of Krishna consciousness. So yeah, one shouldn't feel like they're chewing glass, but there's a way to engage in it, like Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Of course, he's part of Mahamsa Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but he's given the example how to be Krishna conscious in that particular ashram. So if one finds themselves there, then they should focus on Krishna and focus on Krishna consciousness, and then focus on raising the children in a Krishna conscious way as far as possible. And then later, when the children are grown up and married and educated and all that, then the householder couple, they could engage more in activities of Krishna conscious, direct activities. But one person, they told me that people, they shouldn't get married to be happy, right? That's a mistake. Sometimes people think, "Oh, I'm gonna get married so I could become happy," right? It's a mistake.
One mother told me about her son, who's a brahmachari.
Yeah.
Said, if you get married, a wife takes all the bumps out of the road of life.
Yeah. So.
Later on, hit him in the head with a glass. So he got a few bumps.
Yeah. So. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. So, it said that one shouldn't get married to become happy. That's a mistake, actually. It's a mistake. It's a postmodern, kind of, that people have this conscious. Yes, let me get married to become happy. And also, you see, whatever, brahmacharis or whatever, or whoever, they may not be brahmacharis, just young men. Oh, let me get married, or young women, let me get married so I could be happy. So this particular expert on the field, he said that instead of thinking like that, if a person's so inclined, and if that's what they need to do, and so on, then they should think a different way. And that way is that the person should think, let me get married so I could be better situated to practice Krishna consciousness, and in that way I'll be happy. So in other words, someone may not be very well situated in a particular station of life, so they say, okay, let me move so I could be better situated, more peaceful mind, right? So I could practice Krishna consciousness. So there's a little difference there. All right, you have your money there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
And I also have a question this time.
Okay.
And Vijay, maybe you can help me with this. It's from Vijay's book, which is just now coming, right? Really? Almost.
It's being sent over on the ocean?
And I don't know, he can tell you then, but it's in the works. So I was working on this book and many years ago, and I read this story which really sticks in my mind about Manidhar. So he was distributing books all day downtown in some city in Germany, I think. There's a really nice downtown, high class. And he's going. And then near the end of the day, he approaches one guy, and he pulls out a gun.
The guy.
Give me all your money. In German. I don't know the German. And Manidhar puts his finger in the gun, and he says, what are you going to do now? And the guy was so taken aback and charmed, I guess, he didn't shoot him, and he took a book.
I've heard that one too. No,
yeah. It's a famous story. Now the other,
wow,
yeah, it's quite an interesting.
I didn't hear that he took a book. Anyways.
Oh, maybe I'm sorry. Didn't take a book. Okay.
It's amazing, though.
Yeah. So, real quick question, because we've been reading this story about Priyavrata, and if you recall, he didn't want to get into it at all at first.
Yeah.
And his father couldn't prevail upon him, Swayambhuvamana. So Brahma comes all the way down because there's no one to run the universe. And so because it's Brahma, and because he's the spiritual master of his spiritual master, Narada Muni, and they honor him and so forth, so he takes it on. And he's assured, and the whole point of the purports there was that, yes, you're going to be able to perform the service, and you won't get entangled, and you'll still be able to be Krishna conscious. Now, 1,100 million years later of him doing these things, like starting another son, doing wonderfully, and getting married, and it describes his wife, and and now suddenly he's condemning himself. Just see myself, I've gotten entangled, and I'm fallen away from my bhakti, and so now he gets back into it, and he's successful. So how do we take this? Is this just Krishna's way of in other words, he really wasn't fallen, and he was still completely absorbed? It was giving. Is this actually what we meant to think? It seems paradoxical.
All right. Well, yeah, you could say a Vaishnav, by definition, is humble. So even if a Vaishnav by definition isn't fallen, but they feel themselves, because they're humble, they feel themselves to be fallen, and they may criticize themselves in so many ways. Just like you have like Prabodhananda Saraswati and his Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's a beautiful book, glorification of Lord Chaitanya. But he has a whole chapter. The author criticizes himself. You see that Bhaktivinoda Thakur, so many acharyas. And just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he said, I've wasted my life, and I've engaged in sense gratification, and I've completely forgotten you, Krishna. And he he hasn't forgotten Krishna, but it's out of his humility. He's thinking that. And he's also setting an example. He's teaching us that, we have to be careful, but also setting an example of, how to be humble and so on. So it is a interesting phenomenon going on there. But yeah, in this chapter, it seems like it's like Srila Prabhupada, he's going back and forth, right? The purports, the text also, yeah. So, but whatever the case is, he by no means, at least how I understand it, he wasn't fallen, but he was, thinking like that.
And also, as we, grow in Krishna consciousness, and as we get older, there is something to be said for maturity, that there is a natural, disgust isn't really the right word, but there's a natural, I don't want to do that, like roller skating, or, skateboarding, It's something that for kids, and you grow out of it. So as you advance in spiritual life, all that passion and drive served its purpose. When you're young, you got a family, you got to work hard, you got to make money, you got to make sure that, baby needs a new pair of shoes, you got to be at it, But as you grow older and those things are solved, those fire of passion, and sometimes passion is a good thing. Passion builds, passion creates. But it's a fact that one who's intelligent gradually develops a distaste for the passion. And let me just chant, let me hear, let me serve, So part of it is just to show that natural progression in spiritual life and in maturity and growing older. And wiser.
Wiser what?
And growing older and wiser.
Oh, yeah.
There's also no fool like an old fool. So.
So we have last, Devotee, you have a comment? No? Okay.
Okay.
Like a child, he has things that he's really into when he's a kid. And then he kind of grows up. He's not so much interested
Grows
in
up.
fire
That's
truck
what you
anymore.
grow up.
Firecrackers?
15.
No, fire trucks.
Firecrackers still used for Diwali.
Just one final comment, if I could. I think. Oh boy, and that is that when you see the whole pastime, he was fixed. With Narada Muni, he didn't want to do it, and Brahma comes down and says, "No, this is the order of the Lord. He said you have to follow this, and so forth." And so he surrenders to that, and he does a wonderful job. So then, who can deny? After 1,100 million years, he performed. He did his duty. He had all these children. He could put the whole. He has sons who he can then give the universe over to. So at that point, Krishna from within, he's saying, okay, now it's time to get back to what I was doing before. In other words, he really hasn't fallen. He just followed the course that was laid out.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a beautiful purport tomorrow as well. I thought it was really nice. I read ahead. But anyways. All right. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.